He was giving me the business. He's already told me the number of interviews that he's turned down, but he didn't turn us down because he loves It's not because he loves me. It's because he loves you. John Rich is in the house.
I do, and it's always good to be with you. I do ignore a lot of your texts, thinking that maybe he'll forget that he asked me that. But after the third one, I went, yeah, no, he's staying on it, so I'll say yes. But you've always been good to me when there's stuff to talk about. You always let me come on, and I appreciate you.
Well, I mean, buzzed texting is drunk texting. That's what I try to tell people, even to John Rich. By the way, JK mentioned this. Your video and your song Revelation has gone like gangbusters. Congratulations. Outside of the fact that, you know what, our typical radio stations won't play it. Outside of the fact that you won't hear about it on your quote unquote legacy or mainstream media. But we talk about it. We've played it on our show and people have noticed, and congratulations on that song, because that's a song with a strong message about what really matters in this world.
I appreciate you saying that, and thank you for playing it when you did. That ended up turning into an interview with Tucker Carlson, which I think is over 10 million views at this point. And then Dr. Jordan Peterson reached out, who I'd never met before. And he had seen the Tucker interview and he said, I want to talk to John about it. So I went on his show, many millions more. And then Russell Brand saw that. Russell Brand, who I also didn't know, hits me up and says, hey, I want you to come on my show. And I want to talk about Revelation and what the Bible says about what's going on. So it wound up being beyond anything I could have ever thought was possible. What it tells you is that the vast majority of humanity, regardless of their politics, whether they're saved, lost, they know something bigger is happening than what they're seeing on the TV. They just know it. You can feel it in their spirit. Their spirit is rattled. Their soul is rattled. And that song, Revelation, talks about that. It's talking about what's happening just on the other side of what you can't see. What's the real war? What's that spiritual war happening? So I was tasked by the boss to write that and put it out. It was a lot of uncomfortable interviews because that subject matter is not something you normally go on and talk about. I'm not a preacher. I'm not anything like that. I'm a country songwriter with this song, but I'm glad it happened. And anybody that hasn't heard it, you can find it real easy. Just type in John Rich Revelation and you can find it.
It occurs to me, as you're talking about that, and you mentioned Russell Brand, when COVID-19 was going down, and we lost so much during COVID-19, for those of us who are of faith, at least I do. I don't know if anybody else does this, but you just kind of in your quiet times, you wonder I don't know what you got going on, but I hope it's something good. I hope I understand it down the road. And some of the sliver of silver lining behind the awfulness that was COVID, the evil that was COVID, I think comes out in those revelations, pardon the expression, from people who say, I was blind. I was blind to the ways of our government. I was blind to the ways of the inner workings of the deep state. I was blind to what goes on in shadows. Russell Brand is one of those guys. I've followed his career, and he was lost for a long time, and we all are to a certain degree. I'm not judging, but he has opened his eyes to how far the deep state will go to control us. And he is one of thousands, if not millions, of people that are wide awake in terms of taking our liberties back, taking our freedoms back, making sure that we have a voice a week from now and a month from now and 2 years and 5 years and 10 years while we're on this earth, to chart a destiny for our children, our grandchildren, and all of humanity, really.
Well, I was one of those people that I would say was blind. When COVID hit, I think that was the beginning of what will be looked back in history as the beginning of the Great Awakening for the American people. Do you recall the beginning of COVID? I know we were on spring break with my kids down in Panama City Beach, and it hit the news. And the first thing they showed us back then, everybody listening, see if you can remember these images. They were showing us video of Chinese people in hazmat suits driving around the streets of the big cities in China, and people literally falling over dead in the road from, quote, COVID-19. Then they were loading those bodies on trucks and hauling them out. Remember, they were spraying down the streets, hazmat suits. That's the first thing we ever saw about what we thought COVID was that. I mean, you never saw it again, did you? You only saw it in the beginning. And so what that did is it scared Americans so much that we're spraying down our UPS packages, we're spraying down our bags of groceries. It scared, including my family, because it looked totally real. The whole thing, that beginning of that whole roll was nothing but propaganda. Now that we've lived through that and seen it, I believe that was the beginning of the Great Awakening. It made people question everything about the government. I used to be the guy, probably like a lot of people listening, that if a politician had an R next to their name, they're one of the good guys.
Yep.
I just took it for granted. She's good, he's good, or otherwise it wouldn't be a Republican. I can support them. I'll donate to them. I'll raise money for them. I get asked that a lot, to raise money for people. And then as time rolls by, you start to find out, hang on a minute. These Republicans, a bunch of them are in the back rooms slicing and dicing the American people into confetti with the Democrats. They fight on TV and then they go in the back room and they cut us up. I came to that realization. So I started being very careful as to who I would support, raise money for, or align with at all. And I think a lot of Americans are in that position now where their eyes are wide open and we're walking into an election now.
I'll give you another example, and I think it's part of the reason that Trump is such a danger to so many. Our southern border. And I'm not casting aspersions about any past behavior. That's not what I'm here to do. But a lot of I call them Chamber of Commerce Republicans, didn't want to do anything about the southern border, because either they or their business partners or their buddies, took advantage of very, very cheap labor for a long time in a lot of industry. And y'all know exactly the industries I'm talking about. And when you start limiting that ability to utilize that cheap labor, they're going to have to pay a little bit more. Ultimately, maybe we have to pay a little bit more, but the bottom line is they allowed that to happen. I remember when I was in Alabama in 2007 and Bush was president and they tried to work that amnesty deal, and the Republicans were in on it, and Jeff Sessions, senator from Alabama, single-handedly stopped it in the Senate. And eventually Americans got wise, Rush Limbaugh picked up on it, and they started mailing bricks to the Congress of the United States of America in 2007 and into 2008, saying if you don't have because they said they didn't have the money to build the wall. And the message was, if you don't have the money here's a brick. There's one. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. Let's build a wall. This was back in 2008. And Trump comes in 2016 and represents, I think, a continuation of that movement, scaring the hell out of some Republicans that kind of like it. And I mean, we could name names, but there's a bunch of them that kind of like the way that it is in Washington, D.C. and like the way that it is on the farmland and in the construction zones where they get the cheap labor.
I saw Trump today said that when he becomes president, he is going to seize the assets of the cartels and all the traffickers, and he's going to liquidate their assets and give that as aid to all the families who have lost people.
That's so good.
due to the crimes and death that has been rained down upon them.
That's exactly right.
Those are he's speaking the language of the common people. I think that's why our problems. I said this to you a while back, Matt, several months back. We were talking about what it's gonna be like, and I said at some point, the collective pain that Americans are going to experience is going to override and supersede their political differences. We're all going to have the same problem. The border is not a Republican or Democrat problem. It's everybody's problem. Inflation, same thing. You could go down the list where the problems and the pain has now reached a level that you've got people who would never consider voting for a Republican looking at Trump going, I think he's the only guy that can fix it. The house is on fire and he's the only one holding a fire extinguisher. We should probably tap him on the shoulder. I think that's what we're looking at.
You don't talk about this a lot because every time I talk about you, you tell me it's not about you. But you've taken a stand just for your values and your beliefs and for what you believe most Americans believe in as well. And it's caused you a lot of heartache in your life, in your career, hasn't it?
Oh, sure. But I sleep well.
You sleep at night. You get down on your knees, talk to the big fella.
I sleep
it's
just
all
fine,
good.
And my two teenage sons have watched me and continue to watch me fist fight with Republicans sometimes in our own state, which you saw me do that. We lost, but still, the fight needed to be brought.
That fight's not over yet.
We needed to highlight things that were happening in our state.
I'm still fighting that fight, Rich.
Not good.
I'm still
things that are
fighting
not right. People that were lying to us. So my two sons, I look at my role now as, well, if it's this bad right now, what's it going to be like when they're in their 20s and 30s? And I'm the blueprint, me and their mother, we're the blueprint for how they're going to probably take it. So if dad was the guy that would just roll over and keep taking the check to keep his mouth shut, that's probably what they're going to do too. Do we have a good future in America if that's the way our young people grow up? I don't think so. Listen, we stand on the shoulders of many, many millions of people throughout the history of our country who were willing to do whatever it took to keep life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as a thing in this country. There's hundreds of thousands of bodies buried all over the planet that fought to keep life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And there's still people today willing to do it. And now I think a lot of the citizenry now is realizing that what Reagan said, that freedom is not inherited. It's one generation away from you losing it. That's coming to fruition right now. People are taking note.
Well, and he also said, and I'm paraphrasing him, that, as we are just one generation away, it takes an awareness from liberty-loving people, from people that understand that sovereignty means something every single time we go to the ballot box in order to save this. Because the natural predisposition is for government to take power, right? I don't want to get too philosophical, but it's true. I mean, that's the way that it's happened throughout the course of human history. That even if you have a sliver of freedom and liberty, that the entities, the powers that be that want the power and control over you, they're going to try to take that away. And as they try to take that away, they're giving you goodies on the side. Mm-hmm. They're basically conning the people into believing that they're the good guys when they're really not. Their aim is, and I believe the Democrats represent this more than anything, but you're right, there are Republicans too. Their aim is power and control. And if they need to feed you bread and show you circuses, they'll do it.
Yeah, the Constitution was not written to protect the government from the people.
Right.
It was written to protect the people from the government. I mean, where if it gets to the point where they're tyrannical, the people have a right to push back. And that's a pesky little thing for a lot of people. The old Constitution of the United States, man, if they could just get rid of that, they could do it exactly how they want to.
Well, and the same people that would love to get rid of it. I played this little thought experiment last week. They're naming names, they're calling names, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I mean, it's all they've got, right? She's got no plan.
Oh, that everybody's a Nazi?
Everybody's a Nazi, everybody's a fascist. And they've been calling Trump a fascist since he came down the escalator in 2015. And last week I said, even if I grant you, let's grant that in his mind he wants to be a dictator. I'm going to give you that. I don't believe it's true, but I'll give you that. He wants to be an authoritarian. How the hell does he tell me functionally how he makes that happen? He gets elected. What's he going to do? Is he going to go to Congress? I mean, we have this little thing called the Constitution of the United States of America that was designed to prevent any one individual from being able to do that in the course of our history. You would have to blow up the Constitution. These folks on the left have such an ill appreciation for the document. Maybe they haven't read it. Maybe they have and they just dismiss it. The document and the people prevent any one man who even has those designs from being able to accomplish the task.
If Trump was going to be a dictator, he would have done it the first time.
Exactly.
There's your sentence. I mean, it's not like we have to wonder what Trump's going to be like if he's president of the United States. We just had 4 years. We know exactly what he's like when he's president of the United States. Was he a tyrant or a dictator to anyone? No. You know, I think on the Republican side, it's interesting how over the decades, the Democrats used to be the anti-war crew. They were the ones that were sticking the roses in the rifles, flowers in the barrels of the rifles of the Vietnam soldiers. Very famous picture. They were the anti-war. It was the Bob Dylans of the world writing those songs, and good for them. They actually went a long way to stop that war. But over time, it's flipped where now you've got the Republican war hawks out here that they are bloodthirsty for another war. They want one so bad. And I tell you what, Republicans now are like, one reason I like Trump is because he didn't start any new wars.
That's exactly right.
The only president in the course of about 4 or 5 in a row that did not start a new war, only Trump. And, you know, when he comes out and says, I can bring peace back to these situations very rapidly, I believe he probably can.
Well, and Trump is smart enough to understand that Vladimir Putin wants a way out. I think Vladimir Putin I think he will end the Ukrainian war when he's president of the United States, because Vladimir Putin did not anticipate what he got, and he wants a way out, but he needs to save face with his people, and he needs somebody that's willing to find him a way out while getting him out of that conflict, and I think that Donald Trump would be able to do it. I want to share this real quick before I have to go to break. Tell John that he is a preacher, just a different kind of preacher. I love that he's an unashamed Christian that values God over money and is willing to use his platform for good. We have a lot of Christian vision in our music that he could help if he's interested. And then Caden goes on to talk to you about possibly contacting him. But I appreciate that from Caden, who said, and I agree with him. It's true.
Very kind.
We don't have enough of that in our. But the other on the other side, they've got we got John Rich on our side. They got Lizzo wanting us to be more like Detroit. Yeah. So I mean, yeah.
I don't think she knew what that meant.
I don't think. I said at the time, I posted up on my ex, and I was like, I don't think this landed the way she intended it to land. That we want America to be like Detroit.
Again, it's the tidal wave of statements like that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that still think that way, that are blind as a bat. One of my friends the other day, I could not believe what he said on social media, but he went off on it, and I went, wow. I mean, of all people, I knew he was a liberal, but I thought, yeah, but he's got some sense, I didn't know how he's going to maybe vote, but when he got through with his rant, I said, this guy hasn't learned anything this entire time. I'm sure we all know people.
Well,
like
and
that.
there, I use the example often of, and people get mad at me when I use it, but Bill Maher, is an example of a liberal that I have a certain level of respect for, because Bill Maher is what he is. He defends what he is. He's willing to talk to people that disagree with him. He's willing to give them an opportunity to speak back to him. Now, I think he's wrong 80% of the time. But he's not afraid to tackle his own on the Israel situation. Well, he is willing to go after people on the Israel situation and how far off the reservation they've gotten. Those people I can handle. These lemmings that just parrot whatever the last thing they heard on MSNBC, I can't handle it.
The American dream of buying a home, unaffordable. We'll tell you about it at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mr. Ken Weaver. It's 28 minutes after the hour, a couple of minutes before we get into the news. John Rich in studio with us. We're happy to have John talking about the election that's coming up in 7 days. You and I were talking right before we came on air about the 7 days that we have to go. I wish the election were today. I feel like everything's baked in. Outside of the cheating, the possibility of cheating in some of these battleground states, I just feel like people that get it, that know, that understand what's at stake at this election, that they are clear thinkers when it comes to what they need to do.
Are you trying to say you don't believe there's such a thing as an undecided voter?
I mean, where are they?
Where are they? I put out a post this morning on X. I still call it Twitter. The first thing in the morning is about 5:20 this morning. I'm up early every day, and I said, at this point, if you still consider yourself a, quote, undecided voter, you probably eat Tide Pods from time to time. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is.
Well, they look like candy, John.
Well, I know they look tasty. No, I'm with you. I think that's not even a thing. I don't think there's anybody on the fence between what they're going to do.
I mean, right? I mean, as I don't know a lot of Kamala. I mean, I guess maybe I do. They don't talk to me about it. I mean, perhaps they shy away from telling me that they're Kamala voters. I don't feel like I know a lot of Kamala voters. I'm sure they're out there. And you know what? If you want to own that, fine, own it. I don't know what the woman believes in, and I don't think she does it outside. And I did this thought experiment last week on the show. Outside of abortion on demand, and she has been consistent on that issue, that she believes that women should be able to have abortion on demand up until the point of birth. And if that's your thing, then God bless. Literally, I mean, God bless you. I wish you well, and I hope you get the Lord in your life. But outside of that, I don't know what she stands for.
She stands for whatever she needs to stand for at the time to try to get elected. That's it. But it's so blatantly obvious now. I mean, over and over, she won't answer the questions. Listen, so I know Trump. I know the people in his campaign. I know his internal pollsters. I know John McLaughlin. I know those people. Like, personally know them. And they say that, for instance, the black vote in America, they said don't be surprised if it lands close to 40%. 40.
40?
He said it is absolutely north of 30. Do not be surprised if it hits 40%, which I think in 2020 Trump was at like 11 or something like that. So the question is, why is that happening? Well, it goes back to what I said earlier and what I said many months ago, that as the level of pain increases, people only have a certain tolerance at some point. When they say, well, I've always voted Democrat. My daddy voted that way. My grandpa voted that way. But then they're seeing their own neighborhood come under attack, come under assault. They're going, we're picking between gas and groceries at this point. It wasn't like that under Trump. I always vote Democrat, but we can't sustain this. Okay, uncle, the pain, I have reached my tolerance. I'm voting for Trump. Maybe he can flip it. And that's something like the human condition. It's always been the same way. We just won't listen. Or we won't think through something and make a logical decision. It's like telling your son, hey, when he's 5, don't touch the stove, kid. It'll burn your hand. He does not believe you until he actually touches the stove and burns his hand one time. But then he'll never touch it again.
It reminds me of a story my grandpa, God bless him, my pa told me. He said a guy's walking down the street and he looks down an alleyway and there's this little kid, and this kid is just hitting his head against the brick wall in the alleyway, just hitting his head against the brick wall. And the guy runs over to him trying to help him, and he grabs him. And he says, son, what are you doing? Why do you keep hitting your head against that brick wall? And the kid says, because it feels so good when I stop.
Right, exactly. Right.
We'll be back in a moment. News coming up. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 140. One more good segment with our man John Rich. He's in studio with us talking about the upcoming election and America in general. Good to catch up with John and everything he's doing for this country. We so appreciate him. I wanted to mention Flagstock. Because you what a wonderful event that turned out to. I mean, I got the chance to watch. I mean, what a fabulous thing that you guys did for those young men in Chapel Hill.
It turned out really good. So those were the boys at University of North Carolina that saved the flag, kept the flag from hitting the ground. And I thought, we need to recognize these guys, because young people in America, and I'm guilty of it too, get painted with this broad brush.
And we crap on them a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, we honestly
all the
do.
time.
We do.
Oh, they're all worthless. They all drink soy lattes.
They're all woke and
they're living in their parents' basement and that blah, blah. And that's just not true. There's millions of young people in this country that they want exactly what we want. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. They serve in the military. They become police and fire, and they're great kids running around. So we want to do something cool for them. So we had a whole bunch of artists come out there, including Lee Greenwood, to cap the whole thing off, and did a concert for him, did a live stream for him, fireworks show, the whole deal. And it was honestly one of the highlights of my year to be able to play for those guys.
While we're talking a little about you, I want to ask you, how did didn't your dad just recently get a car? When did that happen? When that, didn't you get it? It was a Camaro? There was something, I saw something online.
No, it was a 1970 Plymouth Duster. So that was his car as a kid. So anybody out there, you remember your dad talking about when he was in high school?
I just remember a picture of you and your dad next to this
that
car.
Yeah. So my whole life he goes, yeah, well, that car you bought, that car's pretty fast, John, but it ain't as fast as that Duster was back in the day in 1970. And that thing would hit a quarter mile at 11.8 and blah, blah, all this stuff. And I'm going,
I guess
he talked about it all the time. And so when he turned 70, I started trying to find not the car he owned, but that car.
Yeah.
And everyone I find was a junker, rusted out. They changed the engine. It wasn't factory, something wrong with it. So I called Richard Petty, who's a man I've gotten to be friends with because he's the ultimate Mopar guy, Mr. Mopar. He goes, hey, John boy. I said, Mr. Richard, I need you to help me find a car. He goes, what are you looking for? So I told him. And he said, let Kyle help you with that, Kyle Petty.
Yeah.
So Kyle says, yeah, man, let me start looking around. And they found one down in Florida that was all original, looks like a Matchbox car. Every single spec on it was exactly like what my dad had. And I bought the car sight unseen, got shipped up to Nashville. I kept it in the garage for 4 months, hiding this car from my dad. And when he turned 70,
that's cool.
Rolled the car out to him, and he bawled his eyes out.
That's cool.
I mean, and he drives it every day. Like
you got video of the
That's his daily drive.
Does he have video of the presentation?
Oh, yeah. No, see, and I must have saw a retweet or something about it because this was a couple years ago, right?
Yeah.
It was a couple
years ago, yeah.
And I saw a picture with you, I think it's at your place here in Nash, with your dad and the Duster.
Yep.
And I told myself to ask you about it because that's pretty cool.
My dad's a preacher. He preached in prisons, street preached. If he wasn't at church, it was a tiny, tiny church with 30, 40 people in it. There was never any income. So my dad, 4 kids, double wide trailer, Amarillo, Texas. He's doing every job you can imagine. He was a night watchman at Amarillo National Bank. He was slopping hogs on the weekend at the neighbor's hog farm, giving guitar lessons, detailing cars, selling used cars, you name it, all the time. 180 to 100 hours a week this guy's working and driving a station wagon. And so even though we didn't have a lot of extra, we didn't go without food. We didn't go without clothes. I went to a good school. He took care of business and made sure we all got through all that. So as I did well in my life, I look back at that and had so much thankfulness and respect for what that man did. I said, I got to give him his car back.
That's good.
Well, the one thing I could do for him would be to give him his car back. The one thing he talks about all the time. So that's why that was such a big deal. Not just because it's a cool car, but it gave him back really the best times of his life when he was a kid.
Oh, yeah. And the memories that were made.
Yeah. And now I get to ride in the car with him and let him
make new memories.
Yeah, absolutely. Let him burn rubber down the road in Cheatham County, and tear it up.
You get a lot of street cred from with your Mopar reference, by the way, on the text line. Everybody loves that Mopar reference.
They know what's up.
By the way, 9513, I don't know his name, says, please tell John how much I enjoy playing at his bar downtown and appreciate how they treat the musicians. Not every place on Broadway takes care of their bands. Good for you.
Well, hey, thanks for playing there, Redneck Riviera. We do. I think because I own the place and I am a musician and I have been kicked around in my career as well. Yeah, without great musicians, you don't really have a Broadway. I mean, that's why they come. So we take very good care of our musicians and all of our staff. When COVID hit and everything got shut down, before the government was saying, hey, we'll give you payments or whatever for your employees, that went on for like 6 or 7 months with nothing coming in. Mm-hmm. We kept paying our people. We went in the hole several $100,000 just keeping our people paid. And you know what happened when everything opened back up? We didn't lose one employee. Everybody stayed. We had our team in place, and they're still there. We have virtually no turnover in a part of Nashville that has turnover by the week. Right. People coming in and out. Our people have stayed.
Are you? It occurs to me to ask you this question. Redneck Riviera gets brought up, and I love your place down there. There are a few of them are my favorites, and if anybody that knows me knows how much I appreciate old school country music and old school honky tonks, you can probably pick out the few favorites. Redneck Riviera, Roberts is still pretty good. Oh, yeah. The old school joints.
Yeah.
I'm partial to bootleggers across the street from you too,
yeah,
but
I like
whatever.
Legends. I like Legends Corner too.
Legends Corner's good.
Rubel Sanderson, man, he's a classic.
But I don't begrudge the bigger places, the more modern places. Those are all good too. You look down there from what it was when you first opened Redneck Riviera. It's changed a lot. How long has it been open?
2018, so not that 6 years.
But
that was Mike's Ice Cream. That
was an ice cream joint.
It was an ice cream joint, and then Mike moved up on 2nd Avenue, took his business up there. But yeah, it's insane what has happened down there, and it just continues to get bigger.
People I know there's a lot of. Does it worry you at all where it's going?
Where what's going?
The Broadway, the lower Broad action. Does it? It comes. The good brings bad. Even in my 3 years here, it seems that it's a slightly harder edge.
Yeah.
Than it has been in the past.
I think that the tourism aspect of it is huge. Obviously you got people from all over the U.S. coming in. I wish our mayor was more hands-on with.
Attentive? Is that a good word?
Just hands-on, and would make some moves about downtown to make it safer down there. There's constantly people. You can obviously tell you see this guy and he's barking at the moon and he's there every single night and he's walking up to people, women and kids, they got kids and strollers.
Right.
We need to get anybody that looks dangerous away from that part of town.
It's a careful balance.
Yeah. I wish he'd put a little more focus on that.
Any predictions for, I hate to ask you this obvious question, but I got you here. 7 days from now, Election Day.
Yeah.
What do you anticipate?
I don't think we'll have an answer that night. We're already seeing states saying it could take 10 to 13 days to count our votes in Maricopa County. We're already seeing they're already setting it up for that. I think the real red zone that America's going to be looking at is after November 5th and before that inauguration. Mm-hmm. Homeland Security just sent out a message to sheriff departments all over the United States. I know because 3 sheriffs today hit me with screenshots on them, telling them to be on the lookout for MAGA domestic terrorist acts. Post election.
That's awful specific.
It's very specific. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so
How about some Antifa?
I think.
How about being on the lookout for some Antifa?
Yeah, that's not what they said.
Right.
And so I think any American that's paying attention right now, we all anticipate something crippling happening in this country at some point, something that would shut us down, something that would be something we can't imagine. And I know from my friends in active duty military who do a lot of stuff in a lot of places, they said that the playbook is wide open with the bad guys. So many terrorists have come across our border that they're everywhere. They're implanted, even in Nashville. They're in Nashville right now. And they said the playbook is so wide open that we really don't know which one they're going to pick or which 5 or 6 they might pick, but we all anticipate they will at some point.
You know, my wife says this from time to time, and I hear it from the listening audience from time to time that, you know, don't worry, God's got this. You've got to recognize that the God's got a plan on it and he'll take care of it. But then I'm reminded of and everybody's heard the joke about the flood's coming and the truck comes by and says, get in the truck. He says, no, I trust in the Lord. The Lord's got me taken care of. And then the boat comes by and get in the boat. No, I trust it. And then the helicopter comes by and then he dies. He drowns. And he goes to God. He said, God, I've always been a faithful servant. I trusted that you would protect me. And here I am. And he goes, I sent a truck, a boat, and a helicopter. What else did you want me to do? Right.
No, that's right.
Recognize the signs and recognize what we need to do to help ourselves to protect our liberties. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Noah survived the flood because he listened to God, and God said, build a boat. He did not rapture Noah out of the flood. Noah was in the flood.
Yep.
But the same flood that wiped everybody else out raised him to safety, and he started the world over again, started humanity over again. So, no, Christians and people in general need to be paying attention and thinking about what you would do if something really crippling happened in this country, how to take care of yourself and your family.
John, God bless you. We appreciate you so much. I appreciate you spending the time to stop by and talk to Middle Tennessee. I know how much you love your hometown, and I know how much you love your home state. I know how much you love your country, and you do everything you can in your power to protect it and to save it, and we appreciate that.
I'll come in anytime when you text me at least 3 times in a row. I'll be here every time, almost every time.
Here's John Rich, everybody. We got to take a break. We'll be back. JK's going to stop by with us, and we've got another hour to go on The Murphy Show.